Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to make this cute little car animation and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave that like, it will really help me. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in a most effective way, be sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills all the way to full character illustration in the shortest time possible. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Now let's jump right into Blender, and as you can see, this is not an empty scene because you will need to download this one. You will find the link in the description. Just download the scene, unzip it somewhere, and then open it up and you should see exactly what I see right here. And it's a simple low poly car model with some subdivision modifier, and if we did this from scratch, this video would be definitely too long, so I wanted to provide this for you so we can jump right into animation, because that's what this is all about. So yeah, just grab the file, open it up, and now we can just start building our environment and our little animation. So let's zoom out a little bit, and first of all I want to create a world that will rotate under the car, and that will create the effect you saw in the beginning. So let's press Shift A and we'll go for mesh and UV sphere. And I've chosen UV sphere because we have these nice loops going all around, so that'll be really helpful for this type of animation, but we'll need to rotate this a little bit. So let's press R, then Y and 90 for 90-degree rotation, just like that. And now let's press G then Z and move this down under the car, and we'll definitely need to make this larger. So hit 3 on a numpad to go for a side view, and let's press S to scale this up even more. I think something like this should be enough. Maybe not so much, like that. Now let's zoom in a little bit, and we can press Ctrl 2 to add the subdivision modifier to this, so we have a nice smooth surface. And let's press G then Z again to move it up until it touches the wheels like this. And yeah, that's basically the base for the world. And now we'll need to create a road, so let's tab into the edit mode. Let's go for face select by pressing 3, and let's hold Alt and select this loop right here. Now additionally we'll hold Shift and add to the selection. Now let's press Shift D to duplicate this, right click to release in place, and let's press P and separate by selection. So now we have the new object right here. We can tab out and select the new one, and right now we can tab into the edit mode. Let's zoom in a little bit. Let's press A to select all, and we can press Alt S to scale it along normals until it touches the wheels here, until they kind of like go inside like this. And now we can press Alt E and extrude along normals downwards, just like that. And now let's toggle the X-ray right here, and you can see this is still selected, so we can just press X and delete faces. Now we'll need to add some support loops, so let's press Ctrl R, add one loop right here and slide it over to the side, and one more right here. Now if we toggle the X-ray again, you will see this is the road. So now we can just right click, shade smooth, and do the same for the world. Now the next thing I want to do are these lines on the road, and I will create a new object for this. So with the sphere selected, hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it. Now let's go for a side view by pressing 3 on a numpad, and let's toggle the X-ray. Now let's press Shift A and we'll create a circle. And now we'll need a little bit more vertices here, so let's enter something like 128. That'll be 4 times more than the sphere right here, so 128. Now tab into the edit mode, let's press R, then Y and 90 degrees to rotate, just like this. And now let's press S and scale this up all the way towards the edge of the sphere or the road. Let's zoom in a little bit and we can tweak this a little bit, just like this. And now we can press 1 for vertex select, and you will see now the density of these vertices. I'm only interested in 4 of these, so let's drag a selection like this, and let's press X and delete everything here. And now let's do the same here, press X and delete, and let's delete the rest 3 right here. So I only want these 4 right there, just like that. And now I will just press A to select all, press G then X, move it to the side a bit, and then E and X to extrude it on X-axis. And now I want to extrude this up, so let's press A to select all, let's toggle the X-ray, and let's press Alt E and extrude faces along normals, and let's go up until we see it popping up, you know, on the road, just like that. And now with these vertices selected, we can invert the selection, so toggle the X-ray, let's press Ctrl I to invert, and now press X and delete faces, so we delete the bottom faces, and now we can tab out and add the bevel modifier right here, and reduce the amount a little bit to have something like this here, and increase the number of segments. And we can go for shading, harden normals, right click and shade auto smooth, and increase to 180 degrees. And if you now toggle the X-ray, that will give you this smooth look. Now let's go for a side view by pressing 3 on a numpad. And before I start duplicating this, I really want to have it parented to the sphere, so I don't need to do that later. So let's hold Shift, select the road and the sphere as last, press Ctrl P and parent to object, just like this. And now select only the stripe, and we'll duplicate and rotate this, and then, you know, repeat the operation. So let's press Alt D, now R immediately, so we rotate the duplicate. And now enter -22.5 and let's confirm. And now if you press Shift R, you will repeat this rotation. So let's go all the way, just like this. And since we parented it, now if you rotate the sphere, it will all rotate, you know, together. So that's for the ground and the road, and let's create some trees. This should be pretty simple to do. So let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to world origin, and let's press Shift A and we'll add a circle. Now let's reduce this to something like 12. Let's tab into the edit mode, press S to scale it down like this, and now we can hit slash on a numpad to go into the local view, and press E then Z to extrude this up, just like this. And now S to scale this down. Now we can alt click the bottom loop, press E then Z and extrude it down and scale it up. And yeah, now let's give this some shape. So I'll press Ctrl R to create a new loop. Let's slide it up, and maybe press G and, you know, shift it slightly to the side like this. And now let's create some branch. So alt click this loop right here, press Ctrl B to bevel and increase the number of cuts with the mouse wheel, just like this. And now let's go for face select by pressing 3, select these 4 and hit I to inset, and we'll press G then Y to extrude this out a little bit, press X and delete faces. Now we can press 2 for edge select, alt click this loop, right click and choose loop tools circle. If you don't have this option here, you need to go edit, preferences, add-ons and search for loop tools and just check the box right here, close the preferences, and then you should have this command available for you. So now let's look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad. Let's rotate this a little bit and Ctrl right click here to extrude this out, and S to scale it down. And we can additionally, you know, make some adjustments like this. And then I want to create one more here. So let's create a cut with Ctrl R and Ctrl B to bevel again. And let's do one on the other side, just like this. And again, we'll just inset a little bit, press G then Y to extrude. And again, right click loop tools, circle, press X and delete faces. And now we can select this loop and rotate a little bit and extrude like this. Okay, and now let's hold Alt and select the top loop, make it smaller a little bit, and we can, you know, extrude this up a little bit, just like this. Now tab out and press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add a meta ball like this. Scale it down using S and press G then Z and move it up. And we'll duplicate this few times because this is one of my favorite objects. If you press Alt D to duplicate this, you will see it kind of attaches and sticks to another object like this. So we can easily just scale it down and create nice interesting tree crown like this. Let's move this one down, scale it up tiny bit, and let's fill, you know, the space in between. And I'm just rotating the scene, pressing Alt D and, you know, duplicating these objects around and scaling them. Nothing too fancy, just like this. Okay, I think that'll do. So let's just select the object, and in the metaball properties, let's reduce the resolution in viewport to 0.2, same as the render. and let's right click and convert to mesh. But if you go into the edit mode, you will see this is not the prettiest result, and we can remesh this. So either you can use some of the paid add-ons, like I'm using the quad remesher right here, but there's another way. We can just go into the object data properties, choose remesh and use built-in remesher. Just switch to quad and choose quadriflow remesh. You'll probably need to do something like 2000 here, and let's click OK. If you get the warning message like I did here, that probably means that the geometry is too ugly. So let's just go into the modifiers and we can decimate this quite a bit. So let's have a look at this. I can go like all the way to 0.2 or something like this, and now press Ctrl A to apply the decimate. And now if I go back to the remesh and do a quadriflow remesh, it should just work, and we have this nice, you know, quad based mesh right here that we can further subdivide. We can right click, shade smooth, and we don't need to add the subdivision modifier because we already have one here. So just select the crown, hold shift, select the tree and press Ctrl J to join, and the same modifier will get applied. But the tree trunk wasn't shaded smooth, so right click and shade smooth again, and this will be our, you know, stylized tree for the scene. So we can press slash again on a numpad to exit the local view. And now let's just go to the snapping options, choose face project and choose align rotation to target and project individual elements. So now if you press G and hold Control, you can just snap this around like this, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do right now. But before I do, I will hold shift and select the sphere, press Ctrl P and parent the object, because now if you duplicate this, every duplicate will be parented as well, and it will save you a lot of trouble. So let's press Alt D and duplicate some on the other side like this, and we'll just go around the road like this and duplicate some of these trees. Sometimes you can have more on one side. I definitely recommend not to do this side so dense, because then if we do this camera shot, you would have a lot of trees on this side right here. So just go and Alt D and hold Control to use that snapping option right there. And let me snap this to the other side. And let's do something like this. Now we don't want them to look all the same. So you can just now go ahead and select them one by one, press R then Z twice to enable Z rotation, and rotate them in a random way, so you know you have some variation in your scene. Okay, I think this will do nicely. And now what you can do is to scale them down, some of them, you know, so they're not so uniform. Some of them can be larger. Just like this. And now let's frame our animation. So let's move our camera behind the car like this. And let's press Shift A and we'll add a camera. And let's hold Ctrl Alt and press 0 on a numpad to move the camera where your viewport is. And now we can just press G then Z and move it back a little bit, and then G to reposition it, just like that. Okay, and now for the animation, let's go to the output settings and let's switch this to 30 FPS and now 210 for the length. So this will give us 7-second animation. And let's just select the, you know, ground here, the sphere, and let's hit N for a side panel, and in the item menu we can just enter single keyframe for the rotation, but you can see there's already Y rotation in place. So let's press Ctrl A here in the viewport and apply that rotation, and now you can see there's 0 rotation here, and we can rotate this around X. So let's press R then X, you know, and try it in the viewport if this is the correct axis, and then just go here and in the X rotation right click and insert single keyframe. And now let's expand our timeline and let's press Shift D and duplicate that keyframe all the way to 210. And now we'll just need to shift the value of this 360 degrees. So let's hold Ctrl and hit Tab here in the timeline that will switch us to the graph editor. And now let's select this keyframe right here, and we'll press G then Y and -360. And now you can see this is a long way down, so let's press A to select all keyframes, and if you press period on a numpad, that will focus your view on the animation. So now this is rotating the correct way, but there's an acceleration and deceleration which we don't want, so let's press A to select all the keyframes, press T and switch this to linear. That will make it a straight line, so now if you play it back you will get this looping smooth animation just like that. And basically that's it. Now we only need to add some, funky movement to the car, and I've parented the car to an empty object so we can move the wheels and the car at once. So let's have a look here if this touches the road correctly, and I think this is quite okay. So I will just position it here and now animate only the body of the car. So let's select it, make sure you are on the frame 1 and insert single keyframe on the Z location, just like that. And now we'll just make this, bump up and down, and you can do that automatically if you just select the channel, the Z location. And here on the right, if you don't see that, press N, same as in the viewport, and you can add a modifier to your animation, and we can add built-in function, and that will give us the sine function as the default. And you can see these bumps right here, but it's too extreme and car is bumping up and down like that, so we'll need to go something like 0.1 here, or even lower probably. So yeah, something like 0.02. Let's try that. I think that's quite fine, and we need to make it less frequent, so the phase multiplier will be something like 0.2. Maybe that's like too slow, so let's try 0.5. Yeah, I think this is like funky enough, and let's reduce the amplitude to something like 0.015. We definitely need to make sure that it's not hitting the wheels, but let's add another layer of animation, and let's go ahead and insert Y rotation keyframe. So again, we'll go to the frame 1 and insert single keyframe to Y rotation. And now let's select the channel right here, and we'll add another function, but we'll add noise this time, and let's increase the scale to something like this. And you can see what the car does now. So we'll definitely need to reduce the strength to something like 0.2, and you can see bumping from side to side. And yeah, I think this looks quite okay, but the noise might not have the beginning and end the same, and we want this to loop. So let's restrict the frame range from 1 to 210, and now we'll blend in 15 frames and 15 frames out, so they'll make it more smooth. And now you can see it kind of goes a little bit into the wheels, not too much, but maybe the car could be higher, but you cannot just move it up because it's already animated. So we can just select the Z location channel, and let's zoom in by pressing period on a numpad like this. Now let's hide the Y rotation channel and let's select the Z location, but there is no keyframe anymore because it got replaced, so we need to check additive, and that might have actually fixed the problem for us. This is quite high up, but if you want to adjust that, you can just press G then Y and move this up and down, and you will see as you're moving this keyframe, you are basically moving the base for the whole animation. So yeah, I think something like this should be okay, maybe a little bit lower. Okay, now let's look from the camera by hitting 0 on a numpad. So we have this happy jumpy car, going along some road, and I'm quite happy with that. So let's just finish up with some materials and lighting settings. So I will switch this back to the timeline and just collapse this. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Now let's press R then X and minus 90 degrees and press G then Y and move it somewhere here. That will be our background, and we can tab in and press S to scale it up quite a bit like this. So now we have the scene covered with this background. And now let's go to the render settings, and for the Eevee let's check ambient occlusion, bloom and screen space reflections, and that's just for the preview purposes. So let's just switch to the cycles now. I will choose GPU, enable some denoising, and I will switch mine to optics since I have NVIDIA GPU, and in the performance tab I will switch this to 512 for the tiling, and reduce the samples. And for the animation preview, I will go something like 64, and when I'm satisfied, you know, I will ramp this up for the final render. And to save some render times, you can press Ctrl B and limit, you know, your view to just the camera. You will see this red outline, so when you actually preview the rendered, the outside world won't be rendered. So let's press Shift A and we'll add some light here. Let's add a sunlight. Let's press G then Z and move it up a little bit, and now hold period on a keyboard and switch to 3D cursor, press R then Y and 30 degrees. So we have it at an angle, and now we can increase the strength to something like 3. But now let's actually add some materials. So we'll select the background and let's create a new material, and we want something like a light blue. But you can see this is quite dark because we will need a lot of lighting here because the background is quite far here. So let's press Shift A and we'll add a point light, press G then Y and move it towards the background, something like this, and we'll make it quite strong, something like 4000. And let's look from the camera, and we can move it down, you know, to hide it behind the sphere like this, and now change the color to something like blue, and that will give us this nice, you know, sky gradient. And we can additionally light our scene as well. So let's press Shift A and we'll add an area light here. Let's put it up a little bit, and now let's enter something like 1500 or 750. That was too strong. Maybe even lower. This doesn't need to be so blown out of the proportions. Something that will help us. And let's change the color to something, you know, yellowish. And now to actually better see what the lighting is doing, let's give the rest of the object some color. So let's create a new green color for the background, maybe a little bit more towards yellow and darker. And now let's select the road. Let's create a dark material here, and we can leave this white. So let's just create empty material and push this up. And now for the car, I want to go something like yellow. And for the lights, let's create a red material right here, and we can reuse the road material right there for the wheels. And we can now just tab into the edit mode, select this, press Ctrl plus to expand that selection and create a new one, and assign that to our, you know, wheel caps. And now we can increase the metallic value of this. So we have some metal material there, and we can add the same material to our bumpers here. And now just the windows. So let's tab into the edit mode, and I have them already selected, so you might have too. But if you don't, just go into the face select mode, select this face, hold Ctrl Shift and click here. So they'll enable you to select this whole patch. Now hold Shift, add to the selection, and now we'll do the same thing. Hold Ctrl Shift and click here, and now Ctrl plus to expand the selection, and we can create a new material slot and actually assign that black material there. If you don't like the black windows, we can make them, you know, blue. So just duplicate the material and increase the lightness and change this color to blue, maybe reduce the roughness a little bit. But that should do the trick. Now let's look from the camera. And the last thing are the trees here. So let's select one of them, and we'll actually add that green material there, but duplicate it and make it a little bit darker, maybe more towards the green. And now let's create a new material slot there, tab into the edit mode. And let's just select one of these faces and hold L to select all of them that are linked to this face. And now we can select the new material slot and hit assign. They'll replace the material there, and now we can just create a new one and add some, you know, brown color like this, and maybe increase the roughness a little bit, just like that. Now if you think this is a little bit too empty, you can always add some cloud or things like that, and you can use the metaball technique for that, but I'm too lazy for that. So what I will do is to press Shift D to duplicate one of these trees, Alt P to clear parent and keep transformation, Alt R to reset the rotation, tab into the edit mode, and with the trunk still selected, press X and delete vertices. And now just change the material there to something white and with the full roughness. And now just tab into the edit mode, press A to select all and push it down so it's around its origin point, so it's easier to rotate it. So tab out, let's look from the camera, and we can hold period to switch to medium point and just press R twice to rotate this around a little bit and maybe move it up and place it around our scene to have some, you know, clouds around. Don't make them too close, so it's better when they're like this. But they will definitely need their own lighting. So let's select this area light. Let's look from the side here and press Shift D and duplicate it over. And now this will need something like 1500. So we have some light on those clouds as well. So yeah, now let's play with the roughness values for these materials, because some of them are too like glossy and I don't really like it too much. But I think this will be just fine. So let's select the camera now and let's go to the depth of field. Let's enable it and let's give this some real low value like 1.2, and that will make this all blurry. And now we'll just need to shift the distance to something small like 4 meters, and you will see it here on the car if you adjust the distance. So yeah, something like this. And now in the render settings, let's go and enable motion blur. That will be really important. And now let's go to the world settings and we'll give this some color, increase the value and give this some, you know, blue violet tone, so we feel some of those shadows with that blue and it will nicely blend the scene together. And now we can go to the render settings, in color management, give this medium high contrast maybe and play with the exposure. And now let's play with the position of the camera. Let's play back the animation. And yeah, I really like this. Maybe some camera wiggle would be nice. So let's go to the frame 1. Let's press I and insert location for the camera. And let's press Shift D and duplicate it to the other side. And now just move it a little bit. Enable auto keyframing and press G, hold Shift. And do like these really small increments here and there. Like every 30 frames or so. Doesn't need to be precise, you know, to just have some movement there. Now don't forget to disable the auto keyframe. And now you have some camera movement there, and that will make the scene a little bit more alive. And I really don't like the roughness still on this, so let me just go ahead and increase this on the trees as well. So yeah, that's it for this cute little, you know, stylized animation. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, please again don't forget to leave the like, and if you're new around here, please hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.